how do you avoid running out of energy when you are in a calorie deficit? Now, I'm sure that most of you out there will have experienced this problem one way or another. You've maybe got up in the morning, everything just feels a little bit like it's in slow motion. You feel like you're some fucking zombie from a Hollywood movie. Everything just feels slow. Workouts just feel like a chore. Maybe even those pink dumbbells feel as heavy as fucking 100-kilo barbell. It just feels all a little bit shit. You then start to have low energy, you feel a little bit lethargic, and then everything starts to feel a bit shit. But how do we actually make sure that you don't have energy levels through the floor, you feel a bit more energized, you feel like you want to get on with this process, and you feel like you want to continue and be motivated as you push through? Now, what I've done for you is I've listed out right here in front of me a bunch of different reasons why you might be feeling low on energy while you're in a calorie deficit, and some practical tips that you can implement whilst you're actually going through your fat loss phase. Now, let's count them up here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that we're going to be going through in this particular episode, starting with number 1, our favorite, usually number 1 on most things that we go through in a list on this show: calories. Yes, of course, you are on low calories. By definition, calories are what are giving you energy. Therefore, you've got low calories, low energy. It goes to show that you're gonna feel a little bit low on energy. So of course you're gonna feel more tired than normal. If you've been maybe in a surplus, or you've been at maintenance, or you've been in a milder calorie deficit, maybe where you're at right now represents quite a lot of energy restriction, and therefore it's gonna be a different feeling for you. It's gonna feel like you are low on energy. That's just par for the course. Sometimes, as they say, you've just got to man the fuck up and get on with it. But that would be a pretty shit advice, wouldn't it? Just to say, man up, because that's not very helpful for anybody. Now, if it really is affecting you, if it's the case that you're in this low level of energy restriction and it's really affecting you, it's affecting your mood, it's affecting your ability to train, it's affecting your ability in terms of just even to carry out normal daily functions to the best of your ability. Would even you're a fucking asshole to be around at work because you're always in a fucking mood because you're having no calories. Now, the first obvious thing would be to look at those calories. Can you increase that deficit, or decrease that deficit, so that you're increasing your calorie intake and therefore not dieting so hard? Maybe if you're dieting at 500 calories per day right now, maybe pulling that back to 250 might actually be better for you. You might feel better. You might be able to stick to those calories for a lot longer and therefore make more progress in the long term. Okay, progress will be a little bit slower, but slower is better than no fucking progress at all, isn't it? And then maybe also consider a diet break. If you've been dieting for a long period of time, that feeling of being low on energy is just going to get compounded week after week after week after week, to the point where it probably makes sense for you to say, hang on, right, okay, let's slam the brakes on this weight loss. I've not got to achieve my target look, my target weight by next Tuesday. I've got as much time as I want to invest in this process to achieve my goal. So yes, a 2 to 4 week diet break is actually going to be beneficial for me in the long run. I'm going to be able to keep my mind intact as I go through this fat loss phase, and I'm not going to lose motivation with the process. It's going to enable me to eat a little bit more food, be a little bit more happy, go about my daily life in a little bit more spring in my step, and maybe enjoy my training a little bit more. So maybe think about that diet break as a real kind of tool for making fat loss more achievable in the longer term. Really think about that. The next thing might be low carb. Now, some people get on with low carb, some people don't. It's a valid approach to dieting if it works for you. But low carb for some people doesn't work for them from an energy point of view. So I would say experiment with what you're having in terms of both the amounts and the timing and whether you need to cycle it. So for example, if you are someone who trains in the evening, maybe you want to have more carbohydrate prior to that training session so you feel like you've got more energy in your system. Maybe you want to experiment with carb cycling. So maybe you're feeling a little bit low on energy when you have really, really tough weight training sessions. Maybe you train in the morning, you have a real tough weight training session and you feel absolutely wiped out for the rest of the day. Maybe experiment with high carbs on those particular days. Again, as long as your average daily calorie intake is where it needs to be, you can have high days, low days, medium days. You can move the carbs from morning to evening to afternoon, wherever you need it to be so that it works for you. Just understand that really, as long as your average daily calorie consumption is on point, you can, if you want to call it carb cycling, you can call it carb cycling. If you just want to move carbs around, move different amounts, cool, do whatever you want. Try and make that diet work for you. That's the main thing. And don't be married to that one method. You know, if keto worked for Judy, who the fuck's Junie? Judy is who I was going for. Judy in the office, then of course it doesn't have to work for you. Judy just might be some sort of fucking exception. There you go. So don't be wedded to a method just because it works for someone else, or maybe just because you really feel like it should work for you. Don't be wedded to that. Number 3 is your training. Now, is your training like really super fucking intense? Now, you want to incorporate resistance training to avoid muscle loss. So whatever your kind of goal is, you want to be making sure that you retain muscle or even build muscle depending on where you're at right now. So you want to keep that resistance training in. But if you are absolutely smashing every workout and on low energy, then that's just going to have this compounding effect. You know, if you can't handle those two things together, maybe it's a good decision for you to dial back that intensity. You don't have to go balls to the wall all the fucking time and really just smash yourself into oblivion in every workout. It's just not necessarily. What you're trying to do is just work hard enough to keep things ticking over, keep your body adapting, but actually you don't really need to smash yourself as much as you may think you do. The next one is hydration or lack of it, as the case may be. Now, dehydration is one of the most common causes of fatigue and tiredness, and it's often the one that's overlooked completely. When people feel tired, they immediately say, oh, my iron levels are fucking too low. Cool, what did your blood test say about your iron levels? Don't know, mate, I haven't had one. Oh, right, okay. So yeah, definitely your fucking iron levels then, isn't it? Anyway, so it could be your iron levels, who knows? But most of the time is that people overlook some of the fundamentals, whether it's nutrition, whether it's training, and anything else. They kind of look for the sexy answer before they look for, okay, what are the basics? And hydration is one of those basics when it comes to feeling tired and when it comes to feeling fatigued. So make sure that you are drinking enough. Make sure you're drinking enough so that your pee is clear. That will make sure that you are optimally hydrated. You're not feeling tired, you're not feeling fatigued from a hydration perspective. So don't neglect good old H2O. Next one, you might want to look at your micronutrient intake. If you have got a diet that consists of Pop-Tarts, Haribo, and frickin' Oreos, then you're probably going to be a little bit micronutrient deficient, both in terms of vitamins and minerals, all of which can contribute to your overall feeling of how well your body is functioning, and with specific vitamins and minerals relating to fatigue and tiredness, those being vitamin D and iron. So if you are lacking in those, then again, it's something for you to look at. Now, the only real way you're going to know if you are deficient in either of those is a blood test. Now, what I would say is if you really feel like it's something that you need to delve into in that level of detail, go to your doctor, go get yourself a blood test. But obviously you want to look at some of the other stuff first. You know, are you ramming calories far too low? Are you not staying well hydrated? Are you smashing yourself in the gym, etc., etc., etc.? But, you know, vitamin D is quite an obvious one for people to supplement with, especially like when you live in places like the UK and places like that where you don't get much direct sunlight on the skin without any sun cream and shit like that, and you're not getting the vitamin D from the sun that you normally would. So that makes supplementation pretty much a no-brainer for most people. Iron, then you're going to probably want to look to food for that and make sure your diet is optimized. Now, you could go to the extent of looking for iron-rich foods and things like that. Google will give you a whole host of foods that you can start incorporating in your diet, but start to keep it simple. You know, the old 80-20 rule of trying to keep a lot of nutritious foods in your diet and keep it of quite variety in there. So you're looking at different colors of fruits and vegetables. Again, those sorts of things are going to help you make sure that you've got a good micronutrient profile. You can also add a multivitamin in there if you wish. But if you do feel you are deficient, then you're going to need to get yourself a blood test. The last one is sleep. Maximizing sleep is so fucking important, but people often overlook it. As I've said before on previous episodes of the show, when you are looking at weight loss and when you are looking at building muscle, after you've got calories in check, after you've got your macronutrient intake in check, sleep is the next most important thing. So if you haven't got your sleep right, yes, you're going to feel obviously more tired. You're going to feel low on energy. You're going to feel fatigued. Everything else that flows off of that is just going to be that bit more difficult. Hunger is going to have increased. You're going to be feeling lethargic, low on energy. So your training is going to be a little bit shit. You may be even feeling so tired that you don't hit your normal step count because you just can't be fucked to move. Again, like sleep has such a big impact on all these different aspects, whether it's weight loss or building muscle. You need to make sure that you are focusing on maximizing your sleep as much as possible. So I would say 7 to 9 hours is kind of like the gold standard, but again, it's very individual. Some people do well on 6 hours sleep and some just need more. Again, find out what works for you. So to wrap this one up for you, if you want to avoid running out of energy when you're in a calorie deficit, there's some basic things that you want to focus on. First up, you want to look at your calorie intake. Is it too low? Do you need a diet break? Make those decisions and make what decision is right for you. Next up, think about your carbohydrate intake. Low carb works for some, not for all. Maybe think about carbohydrate amounts. Maybe think about how you're timing that versus your training. And also maybe you want to have a think about having some high carb days and some low carb days based on your toughest training sessions. Then you want to think about those training sessions themselves. Are they too intense? Are you trying to keep increasing volume week after week after week after week, whilst also trying to diet harder and harder and harder? Maybe these two things are just opposing and not working out well for you. And adjusting that intensity of your training may be a route to go down. Next up, look at that hydration. Hydration is a common cause of fatigue and tiredness. Make sure your pee is clear and you're staying well hydrated. Then you want to look at your micronutrient intake, specifically vitamin D and iron. Make sure you're either supplementing with vitamin D, probably going to be most people want to do that. And then also make sure your food is quite nutrient dense. The old 80-20 rule is going to be very beneficial there. But if you need to, maybe go and get your bloods checked. Then finally, make sure you're maximizing your sleep. The land of Nod is fucking brilliant. Don't ever overrate it. 7 to 9 hours sleep is probably around about the gold standard for most adults, but don't feel like if you get on well with 6 hours sleep that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's the real sleep deprivation you want to avoid. So hopefully this episode of the podcast has helped you. Hopefully now you're actually going to implement some of this advice. Now what I want you to do is come and visit me on Instagram and tell me what you thought of these tips at iron_paradise_fitness. And if you want more tips about fat loss, building muscle, and maybe you want to download the free Lean Life Kickstarter pack, which is going to give you a free training program plus a whole host of other free shit, then go to ironparadisefitness.com and check that out. But for now, all I'm going to say is thanks so much for listening. Keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next episode of the show.